Hey guys, in the last 12 months, I've been getting a lot of inquiry about self managed super fund lending. The common thread between most of these people are that they're in a state of uncertainty. They have this problem where they're trying to get ready for the future, but they don't know if an SMSF is the right thing or not. Most of these people have been considering an SMSF for a while. It's just that they don't know how to make a decision because of all the uncertainty. They know one thing, however, and that is in the back of their mind that time is ticking away. I've recorded an interview with a guy I respect a lot, Stuart Bayliss from SGB Finance. Stuart is a seasoned expert when it comes to SMSF finance, especially in commercial and business finance. Today we're going to have a chat about what people do with SMSFs. Let's get into it. Stuart from SGB Finance, how are you, mate?
G'day, Will Bell. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming on. I am not the expert when it comes to SMSF stuff. The discipline of mortgage broking is quite a broad one, which people don't understand. But you are the man for things like SMSF for business owners, because business owners and commercial, that's what you do. Why don't we get into SMSF? Because most of my clients actually have a very limited understanding of what a SMSF is. So today we're going to go over a few different situations. I've got in my notes here SMSF for normies, so we'll have a bit of a chat on that. And then we'll get into some more advanced stuff on SMSF, which people really are kind of in the weeds about. And hopefully we can unwind them today. What do you reckon?
Yeah, we get a lot of inquiry about SMSF just from everybody. There could be mums and dads with some money in their own super account, and that's usually from an employer. Say it's mum and dad and they're employed, that kind of a situation, or a couple and they're employed, and so they've got their business or their company paying into their superannuation fund. There's no reason that you can't have a superannuation fund of your own, so a self-managed super fund. There's a bit of legal work to go with that to set up a superannuation fund, and there's some cost that goes with that. And then that super fund has a bank account. You can roll your funds in from where your employer is paying your super into. You can roll it from there into your self-managed super fund, and then you can do whatever you like with it. Sorry, there are rules. You can purchase things inside of there, which are assets which will appreciate. One of those is property. Property can be purchased inside of the self-managed super fund. Some people have enough that they could just purchase property outright, but why wouldn't you leverage that? You know, somewhere between 70 and 80% borrowed against that property. Then you've got the rent on the property. You've got your SGC, which is what your employer is paying you. That's called the super guarantee contribution. And then, you know, that can help you purchase a property inside of there. One of the great advantages of that is that people often purchase their home and then maybe later in life they get some equity in the home, they've paid it down a bit, the market's risen a bit, then they might start to think about investment properties. We get people a lot who have run out of borrowing capacity after they've bought their home and a couple of investment properties, and then they start to think, oh, well, what could we do now? The great advantage of superannuation, a self-managed superannuation fund, is that it's separate. So if you can think about your world outside the SMSF is the home and any investment properties, any liabilities, anything like that. That's your world out there. But your world inside the SMSF is just made up of what your company is paying into your superannuation fund. So you're 10.5% right now, and any rent off any properties inside of there. And if you had investments that were paying dividends or anything, that can all be taken into account as well.
Yeah.
There are minimums. You and I talked the other day about minimum cash you need. Depends on the size of the property, of the value of the property you want to buy. But look, a guide is somewhere between 100 and 200 would be a minimum. And then it goes up from there if you want to buy more expensive properties. That's
Yeah.
mums and dads.
Yeah, so I think that's the same with me. Like, I get quite a lot of inquiries, people that are capped out on buying investments. Reality is now for your standard property investing strategy that people had in the past is rent yields are kind of compressed, which means they're lower compared to the value of the property. And
Yeah.
that's having an impact along with increased interest rates on the borrowing capacity of clients. So a lot of people are looking at alternatives. So people are looking at things that are going to get them cash flow, which is boarding houses, rooming houses, NDIS. But then they're
Yeah.
also looking to things like commercial. They're also looking to do that in different structures that can kind of move them along. Another thing I get, which it's a really important point with SMSF, but it's not necessarily lending, but it's about getting the right people around you.
Oh, yeah.
To give you an
Great
idea,
word.
I did a video, I don't know, it's like a year ago. It only got 700 or 800 views on YouTube, but three out of those four people that have contacted me actually didn't know if SMSF was the right idea. And whether it is or it isn't really isn't up to us as brokers to
No.
tell you that and give you that advice. What is important is that you've got a good finance person around you, because they're going to be able to see all of these dangers. Like you said, it's a legal environment that's a lot different than just buying in your own name. A broker is often quite a good place to start, because they can see the dangers and they can say, hey, you need, a financial planner or a good accountant, for example, around you that's experienced with this stuff, to make sure you're not making critical mistakes. Because at the end of the day, it's a fund for your retirement. You don't want to be making critical mistakes with this
You
sort of
don't
stuff.
want to mess that one up. No, absolutely will. Yeah. And well
Nice.
said, we're often the linchpin or the center of a lot of these that we can start to filter you out and have and guide you to good professionals in the area as well. I agree with that.
Let's move on, because time's limited, and let's be honest here, SMSF isn't kind of the most riveting topic for the viewers. SMSF for business
It is
owners.
to me, Will.
Oh, sorry. So SMSF for business owners, you might be able to clarify here, but I was under the impression that the original kind of, I don't know if principle is the right word, but the original idea of SMSF was partially so that business owners, it was like a bit of a perk for business owners, for small business owners, that they could buy properties for their business in their SMSF. And obviously there's benefits surrounding being able to do that. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know if it was set up like that, but certainly professionals over time and business owners over time have found a great use for that. So if you can just get in your mind that as an SMSF entity is a very different thing to a company or you personally. So we like to think of them more like entities. So there's you as a person is an entity, there's a company which is an entity separate to the person who directs it. It has its own bank accounts, it has its own tax returns, it's completely separate. Same with an SMSF, it's completely separate. Even though you control the SMSF because you tell the SMSF what to go and buy, where to invest, you do the tax returns for it. Well, you have a professional do that with you. What we've found that is working really well with self-employed people is you might have a large amount of, or a good amount of money in a self-managed super fund, or you want to set one up and tip that money into the self-managed super fund, and your business needs an office space, a warehouse space, a premises to operate from. And you can purchase that premises, and then you've got your trading business out here, and you've got your SMSF here. Your SMSF buys the property, your business rents that property off your SMSF to operate the business in. So therefore, your business is paying rent into your self-managed super fund. That rent is helping you pay off that. A bit like the concept of couples buying properties, instead of renting, they're now buying themselves equity with their repayments. It's the same concept. Your business is helping you pay off an asset for your retirement. Does that make sense, Will? Is there anything you'd add there?
Sense. You explained it a lot better than what I would be able to.
Good.
Thanks.
Businesses have made a great advantage for themselves with that, and they've there's plenty of little tips and tricks inside of that accountants can play with so that you can get the greatest advantage out of that. There's plenty of legalities and rules around it that the government has laid down in their legislation, but you can work within that and make a greater advantage for your business than if you were just renting off someone else, for sure.
One thing I'd add, which is another general thing with this sort of stuff, because I'm sure you get clients as well, Stewie, they have no timeline. Their expectations are, I'll wrap this up in a couple of months. I'm talking someone that has, for example, they don't even have an SMSF set up yet. They haven't chatted to their accountant yet. They come to the broker because they need to borrow the money. I guess the point I'm trying to come across to here is this thing takes time. You really do need to be tactical and understand that it's not simply like going to the shops and buying something off the shelf. It's serious business.
Look, to get slightly technical from our mortgage broker point of view, we can do pre-approvals in an SMSF, even if it's not set up. You can have, TBA proprietary limited as trustee for the TBA trust. Sorry to get technical, everybody, but you can have that set up. And then you run off to your accountant and get all the names in place, the companies, the trusts set up, the SMSF trusts and so on set up, and then come back with those names in the meantime while you're shopping for a property. But you should bank on where, 6 weeks is buying a home. You should bank on probably minimum 3 months, I would say, maybe sometimes more. So like Will says, get your ducks in a row first. Come and see Will, come and see myself, and get the idea of the lay of the land, get referred to some good professionals if you don't already have them, and then get stuff set up. And that will get you a good way towards getting this thing going.
How about, we don't want to go in too technical because it's basically a hole with no bottom when it comes to this sort of stuff. But what are other stuff people are doing around SMSF that may be of interest to the viewers? I think pooled funds is something a lot of people don't actually understand you can do. Usually with an SMSF, it's just husband and wife, the members of the SMSF, to increase the amount of funds you've got because you might want to buy a particular type of asset, which your husband and wife doesn't have enough money. You could use the brother and their wife and all go in together on that. Did you see much of that going on?
Yeah, well, we just did one recently I'll try to make this as untechnical as possible, but if you can imagine two business partners that were not related, they were just friends who created a business together. They had two separate self-managed super funds, which they got set up beforehand and rolled their funds into there. Came up as a better way to do it, to purchase the property through a unit trust. And then they rolled the money out of their SMSFs and paid. So say they needed $300,000 each. $300,000. They rolled $150,000 each out of their SMSFs and granted it to the unit trust. And then the unit trust purchased the property and they were the directors of the company as trustee for the unit trust. Sorry about the technicalities inside of that, but that's a way to own a property with multiples of other people. And you could do that with 10, 20 people if you wanted to. That's a completely open structure. So the actual owner of the property is the unit trust. And then however many people wanted to co-own this property could roll money in and be beneficiaries of the unit trust as well.
And also from my very limited understanding is there are different rules between buying something in an SMSF entity versus a unit trust entity. So
yeah,
again, like you were saying, talking about these entities, if you're buying that property within a unit trust, it's a different entity, so different rules apply. So possible things you can do in terms of investing strategies and all sorts of stuff when it's now in a different entity because those different rules apply.
Yeah, well said. Because the owner is the unit trust, as Will says, there's completely different rules about borrowing for that. And actually, you're not borrowing inside the SMSF. You're releasing the money out of the SMSF. And then what the SMSF is doing is purchasing units inside the unit trust. And that's where the money comes into the unit trust and gets used. And that's all 100% legit, 100% legal, and a structure that is used widely amongst people who know these things and get this kind of advice. But everyone could do it if they've got the money. It's no problem.
Well, I think that's a nice little introduction to the things that are possible with SMSF. Speak to me if I'm just kind of, maybe I'm a kind of normal pagey person, or maybe I'm running a business, but this stuff, finance stuff, curls my brain. How do you get started if you want to look into this stuff?
I think you call Will Bell Mortgage Broker.
You'll go to voicemail, mate.
Oh, wow. I would call a mortgage broker who specializes in this stuff. Just have an open conversation about what you want to do. And in that conversation about what you want to do, your professional mortgage broker would be able to guide you to some professionals that they have in there. So that's accountants, solicitors, financial planners that are needed for this transaction. They could probably give you a guide of costs, and a rough structure. And I think that they would give you enough to go on from there and then speak to those professionals from there. One of the hurdles we find from time to time is the person has an accountant and that accountant is just a simplistic accountant. Like we find this in the regions a bit where they're just used to lodging tax returns, and that's an acceptable thing that is needed in the area, but they're not up on this stuff. And so they sometimes put a roadblock for that person. That doesn't mean it's a bad investment. It means that they're not used to it. And maybe you need a more advanced professional to help you with this part of that. So either you get rid of that accountant and take on a whole new accountant, or maybe you just have a new accountant for the new part that you want to do. Don't get stopped because somebody says it's a bad idea, if you like it and it's doable and you think that you can look after your family in that way, I would make sure you're seeking good advice, not just that, oh, I wouldn't do that, it sounds too risky, from someone who doesn't know necessarily.
Yeah, that actually applies to all professionals, including mortgage brokers as well, because
I think that's fair too, Will. Yeah.
you know, we've all had these experiences where customers have had these expectations that they can only do this. They've only got those expectations because someone who either they just lack the knowledge or the expertise, or maybe brokers, I don't like to talk down, but brokers can get very busy and they can not be as thorough as they should be at times. So with this sort of stuff, it's complex. It's not a 5-minute conversation and this is what you can do. It generally needs good people, and good people are going to seek to understand who you are, what your position is. Then they'll be able to go, well, it's possible for these things to happen, but we need A, B, C, D. That might be an accountant to advise, could be a number of things. But yeah, I'll go back to what I said at the start. Put good people around you and it'll save you from A, having to do any hard work. It'll save you from having to stress. The thing the average person doesn't see is the potential compliance risk of this stuff. That's really important because if your accountant or your mortgage broker stuffs something up, it's still on you. This is the most important thing. And this is why it's good. This is why you need to put good people around you.
I like to use the analogy sometimes. You wouldn't go to a garbage collector to help your plumbing. So make sure you go to a professional who is skilled in this area and can give you good, strong advice. And then, you're still welcome to make the decision on the back of that advice. But just, it's best to have the good advice rather than a professional who is just not skilled in that area and is scared.
All right, Stuart, I reckon we wrap this one up. If anyone's interested in SMSF for their business or commercial property or anything like that, where can they find you?
Yeah, well, you can get me on my website, which is www.sgbfinance.com.au, all one word.
Yeah, mate. Links always somewhere on this page, wherever you're watching. Otherwise, my details are around. So happy to have a chat to figure out what's best for you. Stewie, thanks again.
Thanks, Will. See you, mate.